Thank you for that music. That music inspires me. I listen to it before I teach, and I listen to it before I play tennis, and I listen to it when I'm with smart people like you. I'm here alone. Your program indicated that I'd be joined by Mark Akas. His wife severely broke her leg and had 2 operations. He's deeply disappointed that he couldn't be here. I teach with Mark at Rutgers University, and we developed these ideas together, so I want to give him credit. I'm going to do 3 things quickly. I'm going to introduce you to a concept that is very popular now, especially if you're getting your MBA. I'm going to pick apart the idea a little bit, and then I'm going to offer an alternative to the idea. But before that, I'm an art historian, so I have to begin with a 14th century fresco from Siena. And the reason I bring it in is this figure here is the common good. One of the earliest personifications of a concept that I think everyone here embraces. So keep that in mind as we move through some business thinking, and I'm going to come back to the common good. So, the big idea out there now, sweeping the world, is shared value. It's a framework developed by Michael Porter and Mark Kramer, Harvard University. Especially the corporate community is really enthralled with this idea because it's a rather simple and powerful idea. Instead of thinking of business value as separate from social value, you bring the 2 together, and in the middle is this wonderful sweet spot called shared value. In simple terms, you can solve a social issue and make money at the same time. So think about that. I'm gonna probe this a little, but I want you to really understand this. It's deceivingly simple, but as Mark and I have explored it, especially with graduate students, we come to realize some issues with the idea. So this is a graphic from Porter and Kramer's article in the Harvard Business Review comparing CSR, which I do for a living, corporate social responsibility, and CSV, creating shared value. So they're setting up a dichotomy here, and if you look at the left column, you're seeing things like philanthropy, which I strongly believe in. I'll put that card on the table. Kind of not in the new dialogue around creating shared value. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but they've done a careful construction of moving beyond CSR to this new idea of creating shared value. So a couple of things to note. The firm is really at the center of this, the corporation. And there's an element of control here, and the agenda is set by the company. So hopefully you're starting to see some cracks in the foundation here, which we do. And you know, the title of this presentation is around dialogue and engagement. So I want you to think about those words too and what they really mean. You know, what is a dialogue? When an NGO has a dialogue with a company or a funder, what does that mean? Who sets the agenda? Who's invited to the meeting? Who runs the meeting? I mean, these are the very kind of base level ideas that we're thinking about, and I want you to think about, because public-private partnerships are really important. We've seen a lot of the ideas here yesterday and today. Some were funded, and I think Ken even suggested that business might be one of the answers. And I'm not saying business isn't the answer, but I'm not sure shared value is. So probing a little deeper, shared value is really saying what's good for business is good for society. Here's my personification of common good. Not really talking about common good. And we like to turn the sweet spots in our mind to probing some of the blind spots that are inherent in shared value. And I have one example, and I hate to put a company before us as a bad example, but GE is a good example of a good citizen in any way, but they're often touted as the preeminent shared value company. So you may know about the Hudson River. It's kind of an issue they inherited, but it's kind of an issue that's been going on a long time. since 1977 when PCBs were banned, and a very contentious cleanup of the Hudson. So, one of shared values arguments is that you're going to return value to the shareholder and to the community at the same time. Well, I inherited GE stock when my mother died. Not a lot, but I inherited it back here, and you can see GE is the red one. And so I watched the value of my little bit of stock go down. And ironically, they launched something called Eco-Imagination in around 2008, which was touted as one of the big new ideas of, not philanthropy, not CSR, but everything marching in a direction of green for GE. Green for everyone, green for the community, and with that, it's a big profit opportunity. So if you argue the shareholder value angle, it's really not happening here with GE. And I added Starbucks and Danone and Whole Foods because there are three other companies that I see as virtuous companies, and I just wanted to, I'm not sure what this comparison means on these stock charts. I mean, I'm no Wall Street whiz, but I do look at the GE symbol every day to see what the value of my, my little stake in the company is. And it's not been a good story for me, so. So, violating the too much text rule here, but we tried to get our framework down as simply as possible. So we boil everything down in shared value to a design logic, a design around how we're communicating with each other and how we're communicating, especially with corporations and NGOs. So the first line is no surprise, and the sweet spots, we've already talked about that. And the orchestration and rationality and participation is really about how we're engaging with each other. So no surprise, this is a communication framework talking about a very large social issue. So now that I brought you down a little, we're not skeptical by nature. So we're constructing our own design logic for how things could work. Because, as you probably know, PPPs, public-private partnerships, are growing and growing and growing in scale, dollars, all over the world, small NGOs, small companies, multinationals, and large NGOs. So, moving toward the alternative, if you haven't ever read Charles Handy, you should read Charles Handy. He is so optimistic. And I love the language. This isn't business school language. It's about businesses respecting others and making people happy. How about that for a measure? And there are happiness measures, and there are new social progress measures. Some of you who've been to school have seen this, and I'm very excited about those. A different way of measuring social value or social good. So, as an introduction to our framework, we see obviously the social, environmental, and economic problems are products or byproducts, the current forms of the way we're organized. We want to enhance the enabling conditions for civil society, and the orchestration, rationality, and participation, as you can see here, are more about a two-way conversation, about dialogue, where everyone's opinion counts, where at the center of the conversation is the social issue that we're talking about, not the firm, not the business. So if you can just imagine a stakeholder model, the traditional one with the business in the center and the spokes of all the stakeholders coming out from the center, think differently. Think about the problem. Think about, whether it's water, sanitation, whatever, in the center, and all the stakeholders coming together to have a dialogue, a true dialogue, where they identify the problem, understand what they're bringing to the solution, and working together. So it's a fully shared process. It's, I'm happy to hear all the mentions of open source, because really it's open source on a larger scale. It's the conceptual backbone of open source. So the fully shared process, content, and outcome control that is seeking social value, not the sweet spot where social value and business value overlap. So we're talking more about a virtue cycle as opposed to a prosperity cycle. So shared value, and I'm not saying shared value doesn't work. It works for a lot of companies. But I think if there's anything that I want you to remember is to be a little more cautious when you're entering into a partnership. Make sure your voice is heard, that your issues are on the table, and that everything is not being directed by someone else, like a funder. So businesses, another traditional understanding of businesses is that they exist solely to return value to the shareholder. There's new literature, new research. A woman named Lynn Stout at Cornell she's a legal scholar. She has completely debunked that belief that there is no legal grounding that says companies have to return, that their sole purpose is to return value to the shareholder. Of course, everyone buys the stock with the hopes that, the company is going to be profitable, but it's not the sole purpose for existing. And that's the second thing I hope that you take away from this. It's kind of a simple thing. And we all walk around thinking about that. Those companies, they only, sure, they're doing bad things, but they only exist to make money. Try to think differently about that and read her book. It's an amazing book. Obviously meeting with a lot of resistance. So our virtue cycle. So the shared, the shared value in our mind should be shared values. We talk about shared values. So we're kind of leveling the playing field or recommending as a basis at the very fundamental level of a conversation all the way to the level of an MOU. It should be about everybody. And companies absolutely have a role to play in this paradigm. I mean, other than bringing financial resources, many of you know, companies are rich with employees that have great things to offer. A lot of intellectual capital, intellectual property. And I think one of the most overlooked powers of a company is the ability to convene people that you want, that you need their help. And often companies are the people that can get the other right people to the table. So hopefully the new model feels good to you. I think especially you, as you go forward on revolutions, that I've heard a number of them bubbling here, that I guess my best advice is eyes wide open. I mean, are you dealing with, in the breakout session yesterday, talked about mass communication plans and campaigns, and Kate Campana said, if you're going for this kind of, malaria no more, don't go to the philanthropy people at the corporation, go to the marketing people. And she's got a great point there. And the other very important point that I want to make is that all companies are not created equal. I mean, every company behaves a different way. Every company gives back to the community in a different way. And sometimes they're asking for a return of some sort. And sometimes, like you, they're just looking to make the world a better place. So know who you're talking to. Know who you're writing a grant proposal to. Is it the right place? Are they the right people within the company? Because in my situation, the philanthropy is very far removed from the business. And you might say, aren't you irrelevant if you're not relevant to the business? We're very relevant to the business. In fact, I've heard a quote from a senior leader when asked by an employee, do you ever get criticized for the amount of money that we give away? And it is quite a lot of money. And the CEO, without missing a second, said, it is because we're responsible to the community that we're able to be a successful company. So I thought, wow, I've heard this from the top, so I feel good that this was articulated, because that's what I believe. So this is from a recent PSI blog that PPPs work. Great examples of public-private partnerships, and I think you're going to hear about some of them, especially from Pfizer, who's following me. They work, and they're here to stay. And I think it's incumbent upon the NGOs in particular to be more in the leadership position to dictate some of the terms of the public-private partnerships. So, as shared value is in the air, don't forget about shared values and what values you share with the people that you're seeking support from. So, to return to the 14th century, the cool thing is that if you've ever been to Siena, this is in the town hall. It's in a room very much the scale of this room. And this fresco is on this wall, actually a little larger than it is here. There's a door here, and the actual leaders, the governors of the city-state of Siena would walk in under this personification of the common good, good government with allegory or figures of peace, fortitude, temperance, inspired by the theological virtues. The only kind of religious reference here is faith, hope, and charity, inspiring the common good. And over here on the original I showed you, which was much larger, is justice. And then these are the citizens. And the citizens that governed Siena at this time were businessmen. And so to have this idealized allegory in the council chambers is an amazing statement, and an amazing pre-Renaissance statement. This is pre-Black Death. We're talking, 1340. So this amazing thinking inspired by Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas, going into the idea of the common good. And then just to further fill out the picture, on the left is good government in the city, and on the right is bad government. So you see what the idealized world looks like under the leadership of the common good, in harmony with justice, wisdom, and the citizens of Siena. So they clearly had shared values. Thank you.